Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast with Parker Olsen. He's founder and CEO at Podpitch, has quite a colorful background, an Ironman, world traveler. He has this story. This one's gonna be a cool one. It's presented by my company that's called podprior.com. If you want to scale your pod the unconventional way, you can also check out podpitch.com if you want to become guest on more than 100K podcasts, because that's what Parker does. Very interesting dude right there. Parker, tell us a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, well, super quick before we jump in, Charles, I wanna tell people how I found you. For those that are listening that haven't watched Charles' like flagship video on his website, if you want to see a crazed, caffeinated man riffing on sales outreach for like 30 minutes, you should go watch that. I swear it like jacks me up. That should be like my like I have to get a lot of shit done today pregame video. Because you're fucking crazy in the absolute best way possible, and that's actually how we got connected. um so thank you for blessing us all with that lovely video. um but yeah, I don't know, my background is it's done a lot of wild stuff. I lived out of a tent for 2 years when I was building my first startup, and then I lived out of a pop-up 1995 Japanese import camper van and drove around the country, and this was all in the consumer space, so CPG, food products. Driving around the country, I would show up at headquarters of grocery stores before the office opened. So like one specific example is I drove to Colorado from San Diego, showed up at the Natural Grocers headquarters at 5 in the morning with like things of Starbucks coffee. I had a table. I set up the table in front of the front door. So everybody who walked in the office building had to stop and they had to sample up my product. Or security could kick me off campus. No, nobody kicked me off campus though, and I just served our products to all of the buyers and decision makers that were coming in, and ended up getting a meeting with the grocery buyer. So definitely love to do tons of stuff like that.
Where do you get your crazy ideas and how do you find the balls to implement them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think honestly, being a founder and being like, this is going to help the business, I almost like gaslight myself into doing things that is fucking absurd. Like if I couldn't like be like, oh yeah, it's for Forge, or I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm only doing it because I have to. I don't think I would do a lot of these things. The most recent thing I'm flirting with is, I don't know if you saw this. Yesterday, I posted like a shower thoughts video on LinkedIn of me in the shower. And so I don't know. It's just like in today's world when there's a fucking billion podcasts, there's a million thought leaders, there's a trillion ads, like everything becomes noise. And for me, like I rarely click on an ad. And the ads I click on are just these like absolutely ridiculous, outlandish things, like very untailored, like very kind of raw, rough around the edges. And I think that's just how I think about media and how I think about getting someone's attention. And getting someone's attention is the first step in selling and growing. So to me, it's like that's how I think about it.
Shower tips, man. That's quite interesting. Um, of all the experiments that you did, which one brought the most growth and impact in you and your company?
Yeah, I think, well, honestly, like posting unedited raw like videos and takes on LinkedIn opened up a ton of doors for us at Forage and sort of beyond. Like I've done some operator work on the side, and all of that work has come from these like random finance people finding me on LinkedIn and being like, you're insane, but like I can't stop watching your content, and like I think you're really smart, and like we'd actually love to like have you come in. So I think that I remember one day I think I got a post that got like 300,000 impressions or something, like absurd, when I wasn't doing anything on LinkedIn. And it's because I ran a product giveaway on an airplane, and I just got up with a whiteboard. I walked down the aisle, and it was like young founder, like product giveaway, put in your seat number. And everybody on the plane is like fucking avoiding me at first. And then somebody in like eighth row is just kind of like bored, is like, oh, like, what are you doing? And then I tell him, and I'm like, you just write your seat number on a piece of paper. We draw it. I'll give you free product. I'm a food entrepreneur. And then everybody else around him's like, oh, I'll do it too. Like, I'll do it too. And then I actually got the flight attendant to let me announce it on the airplane, and somebody was recording it, and I got the recording. and I put that up on LinkedIn, and like that went viral on LinkedIn, and then it also that was like our highest grossing TikTok ad ever. Um, that did super well. There was another one of me living out of my tent, and I sort of documented. And I was like, I've been living in my tent for X amount of years because I'm trying to make this food product. And again, that was our second best performing ad creative ever by far. Um,
How is that living in a tent? Like, what are the challenges of living in a tent other than back pain and cold and yeah, shitty sleep
No back
conditions?
pain. No, it was lovely. Honestly, some of the best sleep I've ever gotten. I built out a tent. I had 5 inches of memory foam. I had to have a dehumidifier in there. It was just like cold, but I had like weighted blankets, wool blankets, and it was so cozy. It was in the backyard of my house. I had some roommates, and then I threw out my bed, and we were using our bedroom as our office, like our startup space, and brought in some interns, and we built the brand, and like, yeah, I mean, it ended up being awesome. And for me, every single day I knew what I was working on because I it put me in like a mental just like tunnel of like focus in a lot of ways where I think for me whenever I do my best work is like when I take myself out of like a normal living. It's like, oh, I don't just go home and like hang out with my friends or whatever, which I was still doing, but like I was going to bed at night in the tent because we were using our bedroom as a startup office. So every day, like I knew why I was doing what I was doing, and it kept me very focused.
We both started in the field of DTC. I pulled the plug on my nootropic startup 7 years ago. How hard is DTC for you, and why did you decided to shift to something that's more service or SaaS based?
Yeah, SaaS-based. I mean, for anybody that's thinking about starting a consumer business and a consumer business with products that have shelf life, stop right now and turn around. This is the first thing I'll say. But I mean, it's just so fucking hard. I mean, acquisition costs, like shipping costs, and I think part of the challenge is consumers have become so used to getting products immediately and for free and like in really pretty packaging and all these things. And like as a young brand, like it's really costly to like 2 day ship and like have all of these components for a consumer where after sort of paid media got more expensive, it's just you just can't make any money. It's really, really challenging to make money in that business, and it's just a fucking grind.
It is. So what was your marketing strategy with that one? Because mine was Facebook ads, Insta ads. We had sample. We had a funnel also. Like they had to pay $7 for, I think, a sample. And the second step of the funnel was like buy a bottle. The third step was buy two bottles, and we kept like lowering the price. With that, on some days we were in the green. So meaning that we spent, let's say, $100 on Facebook ads, and we made 130 that day.
Yeah.
And on some others, most days we were in the reds. And at some point, my founder was like, yeah, let's pull the plug. Maybe it was a bit too risky on him. Like I'm more of a risk prone entrepreneur. He's not. Um, what was your growth strategy, and what made you like officially say, fuck it?
Yeah, I mean it was the same thing. Like we had some ads that did their creatives did super well, and then the iOS updates hit, and like we couldn't do anything over paid media. And I'm not a super well trained paid media expert, and so that was a challenge. And then we started trying all sorts of different things, right? I mean, we went through an influencer marketing phase, a gifting phase, sort of like, you get your first subscription 50% off phase. That was a whole trend. And then I got into podcast guesting as an idea, as a concept. That was sort of what led me to think about Pod Pitch, and sort of what we're doing now. And then was looking at all other sort of like, yeah, like free opt-ins, right? We created different funnel items around brain health, productivity, whatever. If you became a new customer online, you got a personalized like forage creature. We had this like fun creature branding, and we had an AI automated generator where we create like a one of a kind forager that is your forager, and then we would include that on like merchandise and whatever. So I don't know, we considered a lot of things, but nothing worked that well. And so that's where it was. It's just like you're just sinking thousands and thousands of dollars into trying all these different things, and nothing's working. And so we ended up kind of flipping and really focusing on retail, at a certain point.
Podpitch seems like a genius idea. Tell me a bit more about it, how you got access to that big of a database, and what is the flywheel behind it.
Sure. Yeah. So, from what we've gathered, we believe we have about a top 25 like global podcast data set, and that really powers our product in a lot of ways. And a slight background, I'm not sure actually, Charles, if you're familiar about this with me, and we may have chatted about this last time, but in 2017, I built a Twitter account from zero to about 750,000 followers. And so how we did that back then, and I don't know, I'm not building Twitter accounts right now. I assume it's similar, but it was all about trading retweets with other accounts. So you go to a similar size account, you say, hey, I'll retweet one of your posts for 15 minutes. If you retweet one of my top posts for 15 minutes, you both retweet, you cross-pollinate the audiences. Their audience, some of them end up following you, vice versa. Then you unretweet, and then you do it again with a different account, and it's all day. And that is how a lot of those accounts are laddering up. Um, and so, anyways, when I think about podcasting, like we've collected all this data, and so with this data, we've layered in AI on top of this data, and specifically to answer your question, we've collected this data set over probably like 20 to 40 different data sources. So some of them, probably like 60% of them, are roughly public or have certain sort of paywalls that are in front of them, but like you can pay for it and collect the data, or vice versa. And then the other ones are a little bit more tricky to find. We have a really talented data scraping team, but the idea is that we layer AI on top of it and can say, hey, we know where your target audience, what podcasts your target audience are listening to, and we know how to reach that host, and we can automate all the outreach to the host. And then we also create co-branded assets, promotional assets from each episode that creates a win-win scenario for these hosts and the guests, right? So, hey, we're going to create great video content that is co-branded with this podcast, right? And then also myself in this example. And I'll share it with my audience and you'll share it. And so again, it starts to cross-pollinate the audiences, right? Now my audience is likely maybe going to view this episode and maybe start following you, right? And so that's sort of our thesis. So we're talking to podcast hosts, bringing them in network to say, hey, any guest we bring on your show, they're guaranteed to share the episode with their audience. We know they have an overlapping audience. We create really good promotional assets. So it helps podcasts grow as well. So we're creating sort of a win-win scenario here.
The main source of these podcast emails, what is it? For example, I use Contact Out. I just put the word podcast in there. I target CEOs and founders, not really the host title. So, and with that, I get a bunch of founders and CEOs that are podcasters. I think there are like around 200K or something like that. Not all of them are good. Contact
Yep.
Out ranks them by their popularity on their LinkedIn, how much followers they have. Am I on the right path here? And what low-hanging fruit would you have for me? What paywall should I just jump over?
Yeah, I mean, Listen Notes does a really good job of cleaning up like a lot of like RSS feed, right? Like you could go out and search RSS feeds and you can find contact information, but it can be like broken, it can be like it can be fractured. So like an email address can be like separated with spaces, for example, and so it can be really hard to parse through and clean the data. But Listen Notes does a great job at it. There's a couple others. They're slipping my mind right now because our data scraping team has found them and collected them, and then they're putting together scripts to basically clean the data, download the data, and then we also have an automated validation step. So like as you mentioned, right, a lot of the contact data maybe is outdated, and so whenever we pull data into our model, we run it through a validation step that checks if like the email is still active or when it's last been active, etc. Because yeah, you can also get a lot of bad data, and if you're doing a ton of like mass cold outreach with bad data and you're getting bounces, it can sort of be negative, right, for your email deliverability score.
Because Listen Note is kind of costly. No, they're planned. Don't they charge per podcast? Like, what's the economics here?
Yeah, I mean, you can work with them to get some more enterprise pricing. We use it more also as like spot check, right? So if you can like you can go and publicly collect every active podcast that's in English everywhere around the world, and then what you could do is with your existing data set, overlay the data set, see where you're missing holes, and then you start targeting those podcasts that you're missing holes. I mean, how are you prioritizing and like thinking about what types of podcasts you're collecting data for and reaching out to, et cetera? Yeah. What are they charging you? Like 40 cents? Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, 4.2K, contact out, I mean, I pay like, what, $100 per month for like 100K contacts, so
Not bad.
yeah, the economics are just there. But I mean, what you probably did, you scraped, listen notes, right? That's what a bunch of folks do, so. But the emails, they're not there, they're hidden, so did you pay like,
Mhm.
I mean, 100 fucking K to get the full list, or like?
No, we didn't pay 100K. You can, so the other thing you can do is with the RSS feeds, it's a good place to start. And then you can move from there. So like if I were to, recommend, you can find the RSS feeds and like back into the RSS feed URLs is another way to think about it to collect a decent chunk of information.
Right, okay, interesting. And then what's the offer? Last time you told me like around 1K a month for like a couple of appearances per week, like how do you plan to scale that?
Yeah. So I mean, our offering now is anywhere from like 1 to 2K a month. We do some pretty heavy discounting on a first month to be like, hey, do you think this is worth it and valuable or not? And then yeah, what we're guaranteeing is like we're getting you on basically at least four, and you can ratchet that up, relevant podcasts where like your target audience is listening, and then we create 3 to 5 short form video assets with all your branding for that as well. So it's like part content, part marketing, part landing you on like hyper relevant shows. And part of the value is understanding what shows are relevant, getting you on those relevant shows, and then creating the marketing assets. So yeah, that's sort of our current pricing scheme. We actually raised prices at the end of 2023 of like, I don't know, we just like got a lot of feedback around like, hey, like this is a really good bargain. And like really now who we're thinking about going after and who we're in talks with are like, hey, we could go sell 10 seats of this product to, a mid-market cap tech company to get 10 other execs on all these podcasts, flood the market, right? Everybody's hearing their name, and that can be a really valuable tool. But yeah, I mean, we do have pricing sort of available for like smaller businesses. The other thing we're thinking about doing is doing like a pay per action. So I don't know if you saw that like Zapier is changing to that format here in 2024. Yeah, so it'll be like pay per action versus just like paying for a seat or paying a monthly fee. So it's sort of moving away from software as a service of like monthly subscriptions. And so we're thinking about doing stuff like that as well, of like, hey, like you can pay like per podcast that you're going on in this relevant category, or pay specifically per how many videos you're getting per podcast to make pricing a little bit more flexible for folks who, hey, I want to go on 50 podcasts this month, or I only want to go on two, right? And so our product and service can sort of help service both types of customers.
Really cool, dude. Love what you're doing. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, mostly I'm on mostly LinkedIn and Twitter, Parker Olsen on both. Sort of getting back into Twitter. But yeah, that's really like where you can find me. And part if you have any interest in Podpitch or want to chat or curious, Parker at podpitch.com, and drop me a line, and yeah, we'll see if we can work together.